Hello, everybody. I'm Reverend Charlotte McGinnis, and welcome to my soulful conversation, my heart to heart here today with Reverend Vickie Spray. And every week it's been awesome. It's been diverse. We've had people of different perspectives, and that's really what this is all about. I was talking to someone just this week, and I said, I feel like this is my own little coast to coast. It's just putting a lot of good stuff out there. And as I say, take what you like, leave the rest, but you're going to want to take a lot of what we have to talk about here today with you and into your heart. And I was blessed to meet Vickie through the Alliance of Divine Love Ministry, which we're both ordained in, and we've kept in touch, remained friends. We really haven't connected one face-to-face in person, except at conferences. We keep saying we'd like to spend some time together. It just hadn't happened yet, but it will, right?
It will, most certainly.
Yes, indeed.
Definitely.
Yeah. So but I know Vickie's heart. I've experienced her work, and we've had many conversations over the years. So I do know Vickie well, and man, oh man, what a story. And you are a miracle, and you are here. We always hear you're here for a reason. You're here for a purpose. And for you to overcome everything that you've overcome, your grandmother murdered, your mother murdered, your brother murdered, or did he commit suicide?
He committed suicide.
Committed suicide. Your father, alcoholism, and you lived in foster care growing up. I mean, gee whiz, when people say, well, I can't do this because I'm stuck in the past and I had all these terrible things. Well, you are an example of someone who's overcome and use that as an opportunity to bring forth healing and your light to the world in a huge way. So
thank you.
Thank you. And, you're a storyteller, and I'm not going to even, I said, don't tell me about the wizard story. I want to hear it firsthand. So we're going to start off, and Vickie, welcome. Thank you for being here. And I'd love to hear this wizard story, as I'm sure everyone else will too.
So everybody knows that Source is weird. Source does all kinds of weird stuff to get our attention. When this happened in my life, Mary and I had just started building this house. We had bought 6 acres with a single wide trailer, and we had plans on building a house or moving a house out. I had by then, so this was 2008, I had by then, through lots of serendipities and synchronicities and miracles, become an ADL minister. I'll go back to that a little bit. I had been seeing flashing lights out in the yard. I had this time lapse thing that occurred with our dogs that Mary told me 3 months later that she had. And so before I became an ADL minister, I had some invitations that I didn't know were invitations. I thought maybe I'd been watching a little bit too many Ghost Adventures. Like I didn't quite understand what was going on. And then about that time, ran into a woman in an airport. She'd become an ADL minister. I knew her from Gainesville. Went out to Tahoe. We were doing some skiing, and they were all watching the Super Bowl, and I was out in a jacuzzi, and I could not get that conversation in the airport that she and I had out of my mind. I kept hearing that she'd become a spiritual counselor. She'd become a spiritual counselor. And I'm like, spiritual counselor? What is a spiritual counselor? And so called Reverend Bob, I'm like, I don't know. Became an ADL minister, put it away because I did not want a church, did not know what to do with it. And so I just kept going on my state job and doing the do thing,
Vickie, what work were you doing at that time?
I was working for the state of Florida, putting paper from one side of my desk to the other and calling it a day.
Okay.
And it was funny because, I thought that I had pretty much arrived. I was stable. I was in a relationship. I had 6 acres and we're going to get a house. And I'm like, you pantry full of food and insurance and a little bit of,
Yeah, you're living the dream.
Right. However, so I had become an ADL minister and sat with it. And I had done some things like I had done some healing nights, Healing nights are where women come together and they bring their art, their music, their any type of artistic expression around their experience of healing. So I had done some of that, and that had been part of my internship. So, and I had people sitting in my desk, all in my office all the time. I mean, there was always somebody in my office. And before that, back when I was drinking, I was always helping somebody sitting on the bar stool. So this had always been this had always been my journey. So fast forward to a couple of years having ADL ministerial license under my belt. So I'm in the middle, Mary's at work, and I'm in the master bedroom, and I'm putting down the flooring, minding my own business, just doing my thing, not listening to music, just doing my thing. And I hear in my head, outside my head, that weird kind of thing that you don't know if it's audible, but it might as well be audible. Look up into the living room. And if I were to do that, which I chose not to because it scared the crap out of me, I would have seen what I saw in my mind, a wizard standing in the middle of the living room. I do not do wizards. I don't do the throne thing. I never did any of that.
Harry Potter, none of that.
None of it. I just don't. So I still don't look up because I'm too terrified. So there's a wizard in the living room. There are people in the living room. There's a kid, there's like a 13, 14-year-old kid facing the wizard where the wood stove is. He had jeans on and a white t-shirt. I can still see it in my head. And there were just people. I could just see kind of like heads sitting on the floor and on the couch. I get up. I went out the porch and still did not look. I went across the yard. The trailer was still there because the house wasn't built yet. I go into the trailer and I get a glass of water because in the movies, that's what you do. When somebody's upset, you wash your face or you get a glass of water. The men wash their face and the women get the water. I don't know why that is. So I got a glass of water.
Thank God for movies.
I take a water and I'm looking at the house and I know that I have to go back over there. And I don't understand what's happening, but I know I have to go back over there. So I finished my water. I wasn't much of a prayer even then, and being in fight, flight, or freeze, prayer was not a thing I was going to do. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back over there. And I laugh at myself. And every time I tell the story, I laugh at myself because I go across the yard, I go back up the steps. I do not look into the living room. And I get back down on my floor, my legs and my knees and my hands, thinking that I needed to be in the same position. There's a story somewhere that David Cohen says something about, there's a story about having to be in the same exact spot, So,
right.
So I did that. And as soon as I got down there, I had another image of a whole bunch of people in the back of the backyard.
Oh, wow.
And then the next image I had, the wizard was gone. People were still there, but the wizard was gone. The next image I had was on the front porch. There were people on the front porch. And all of a sudden, I was seeing behind someone's eyes or through someone's eyes. And this person was, whoever they are, was walking on the front porch. And there were people to the right and there were people over to the left. The energy of the people was expectant. They weren't needy. Whoever this was felt the energy. I felt the energy at the same time. They were expectant, but they weren't needy. And this person, they were looking at this person. And then it went away.
Wow.
Just went away. So I leaned up against the wall, not sure if anything else was going to happen. And just listened to the house was entirely quiet. Nothing else happened. And what came from that, Char, was, don't go to the hardware store for milk, So in other words, sometimes friends are not the place you need to go to with this kind of stuff. Because I had one friend who was a gardener and a farmer say, you're supposed to feed the people. So, and then I had somebody else tell me that I was seeing the future. And then somebody said I was seeing the past. And by the fourth person, I'm like, I need to stop asking these people. They don't know. They love me and they want to help me, but they don't know.
Yeah.
So what else could I do except for ask spirit? If you're going to drop something like that into my consciousness, then I need some more information. Nothing came. I went back to the state job, paper from one side to the other. But what happened was that life became so intolerable. It just became intolerable. And so two things happened. One was that I became so sick of it that I had to find a way to get out, but I was too afraid to get out because what else? We just built a house. And the pool, you've heard it. Everybody's like, I can't leave because of insurance, or I can't leave because of this.
Right,
I get that. But two things, I realized that I would never, ever, ever know the truth of what that was about if I stayed where I was. I would never know it. I would go through this lifetime and it would have been an experience that I would tell somebody at tea parties and coffee, but I would never, ever find out what that invitation, it was an invitation for something and I didn't know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing happened was my office mate, a neighbor, one morning was raising all kinds of cane. There were doors being slammed and all kinds of stuff. And after it was safe enough for me to check in on her, I stood at the door and I'm like, something's up. She goes, yeah. I'm like, what is it? Because I'm the person.
Yeah, exactly.
She sat down and she said, I forgot to take my Prozac. And when she told me that, I knew that if I stayed there, I was going to be on Prozac within months. In order to stay in the status quo, I was going to be on Prozac. And I put in my notice very shortly after that.
Wow.
Within a month, one of the people who had been sitting in my office, whom I had counseled for free, called me and said, I really need you. Well, by then she had become a lawyer.
Wow.
And I went to her house. She was an internship when she was there. I went to her house and I counseled her and I helped her. And she handed me $100 bill. I'm like, I like this. This is what I like. I could do this.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it took me 2 more years to be able to feel like I could actually do it full time. But without the wizard, I would have never, ever moved in this direction.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's the wizard.
Well, what year was that?
2009.
Wow. So not too long ago, actually.
Yeah.
Wow. And I've known you almost that long. So
yeah. I started going to conferences a little bit after that, maybe about 2 years after that.
Yeah. Wow. I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm glad you paid attention and answered the call. And, it's kind of like spirit is always speaking to us. It's just whether or not we choose to listen. And I think that, shuffling the papers and you, like you said, knowing that if you stayed there, you were going to be in the Prozac in a couple of months, we feel that, we know that. And deep down, we know what we need to be happy and to be whole and healed. So, but sadly, and I'm sure you know this, and thankfully you're there to help people, but most people go through their whole lives thinking they don't have another way.
It takes a lot of pain for most people to surrender to that call. And it's, I had 2 things going for me. One, I had been through a lot of it. And 2, I had a wizard show up in my room or in my house.
Mm-hmm.
The kicker was that I couldn't, because I was also an alcoholic and I had to get sober. I had to do a lot of healing before, the wizard, there was a lot of healing before I could even think about being in a real relationship where I was all in. I had to do a lot of healing.
Yeah.
And so, but the real kicker besides the wizard was the thought that I would go through all of that and not answer the call.
Right.
That was just a travesty. The idea was just a travesty to me. It was just, and even after the yes, there's 1,000 other yeses behind that. And
exactly. Well, that's part of our life experience, is being willing to tune in and listen and follow that path. And before we got on here this evening, we had that exact conversation. It's the time I think so many of us are feeling that call, the light workers, healers, ministers, whatever you want to call us,
Absolutely.
everybody really on the planet is
Yes.
feeling that, need to emerge and to let
Yes.
go. And I don't think
Yes.
we're finding any sense people are not finding sense in the world like, we'd like to. We're not finding meaning. We're not finding comfort, safety. It doesn't exist here anymore.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that, because on the microcosm, the individual journey, that same thing has to occur. All of our crutches, all of our fallbacks, all of our little things that we use are going to be stripped from us. And that's on the individual journey. And that's been going on for some time. And now on the macrocosm, the same thing is happening. The religious organizations, the governments, the medical, the educational, the whole system, all the systems are falling apart. All of our goodies are going away. And so where are we going to go? Everywhere, the place we've avoided to go, and that's inside. And I'll tell you something. When I first started doing this work, I knew that I had my own I suckness going on, but I had no idea that it was a human condition. I mean, I didn't know. I'd seen some evidence, lots of suicide, lots of alcoholism, lots of drug abuse, lots of broken up relationships, seen lots of evidence, but I hadn't connected the two.
Yeah.
But there it is.
Because that was your reality. You didn't know any difference. Like, well, I guess this is what this is about, right?
Exactly.
And I mean, that also, Vickie, when you were a kid, what a journey. I mean, how did you cope with your life as a kid?
I did the same thing that a lot of humans do. Is I succumbed to the belief that I wasn't worthy, and I fought against that simultaneously. And that's why a lot of people don't give in until they're like 30, because we will hold on to the hope that maybe we were wrong. In other words, when we're children, between the 0 and 7, we make up our mind about who we are. And the more dysfunctional it is, the worse that it is. So we grow up thinking there's a monster inside of us. And so we don't want to go there. We can't go there. We've got to go external. So let's try this. Let's go external. And let's put our fist up in the air and say, stop treating me bad, but, put ourselves in positions to be loved by the wrong people. So we have this clash, this constant clash. And so I always say, I started getting sober when I was about 33 years old after a lot of research, but about 33 years old. And it was because I was exhausted. I had tried everything. So I came up with the idea that I was unworthy, but I also held on to maybe that's not. But I had grabbed onto suicide. I had grabbed onto suicide as a way to get me through. What I had said was, if I ever reach a point where it becomes too much, I know I can lose. So suicide was my friend, and here's source for you. So 17 years old, my first job was in those pharmacies with the ice cream fountain, which, why not? What a great place to work, right?
Yeah, the pharmacy or the ice cream fountain.
I hadn't gone into pills yet, but yes.
Just check.
Ice cream, the ice cream most certainly. But I had tried religion, and I had moved toward becoming a lesbian. By that time, I was like, I think I might be bisexual. And so I was a mess. I was an absolute mess. And I didn't have a support group. What I had was a culture that judged that. And I had a religion that judged that. And I still had something inside of me that was keeping me alive. But one day I'm like, I'm done. I was 17 years old and I was done. And I was living with this couple, and they were completely dysfunctional, of course. And I was renting a room from them. And I'm like, I know nobody's home today. And today's the day. He had a 357 sitting on a holster in his headboard. I knew exactly how to use it, and I know I was going to use it. And it was just going to be done. And I wasn't going to leave a note. Like I said, I was done. It was done. I get doneness. So I drove my little 71 Beetle home, and I pulled in the parking lot, and I looked at the house, and I got out of the car, and I walked in, and I glanced down on the couch, and for some reason, out in the living room, which was very unusual, I had the Bible that my Meemaw, my grandmother, had given me. I have to cry. And I said out loud, I'm going to give you one more chance. And I sat down and I opened it up to Job. And the part in Job where God is reaming him a new butthole. You know, tell me where the muscle in the hind end of a horse came from. You explain to me how the birds fly. Please explain. I want you to tell me how it is that the antelope can run so fast. I was like, so God was saying, you know, just the perfect, if it had been Psalms, oh, you know, nah.
Yeah.
It was Job.
Yeah, you went right for the guts, right?
And I didn't do it. Flash forward to my baby brother hanging himself and me losing my mind for a year. I couldn't work. I became agoraphobic. I couldn't leave the house. I had a relationship, of course, dysfunctional. I mean, just might as well just tag that on to every relationship that I had. But we were two dysfunctional people keeping each other alive. But he committed suicide, and I lost my mind. And thank goodness I had her. She had had a mental breakdown the year before, so she took her turn with me. About a year out of that, and this is why I have so much faith in humans, is that we have the Spirit of God in us, and it will come up, and it will give us another hello. It will call us to it. It will do it. Mm-hmm. And so it did. And for whatever reason, I was able to leave that dysfunctional relationship. I became a park ranger, which had always been a dream job.
I wanted to do that.
Oh, it pays absolutely no money, and it's a lot of fun. But you can also just go out to the woods. So I got that job, and I'd come out of my depression, and I had started to see green again. That's how I always say it, because when you were in such a depressed state, you do not see colors. You just don't. But I had started to see green again, and I got this job, and I kind of thought that this job was going to do the trick. 3 months into it, 6 months into it, I have no idea. I'm like, there's still. So one day I walked out into the woods, and I thought about taking a rope, because I think I was done, because the job hadn't done it. The dream job hadn't done it. I did not take a rope. I walked out into the woods, and I fell down in the middle of the woods, and I started weeping and wailing and crying. And I screamed out, "What is wrong with me?" And in that moment, I was saying the very thing that I had thought my entire life, that there had to have been something wrong with me, or none of this would have happened. None of it would have happened. And when I heard myself say that, right after that was, "You have to give up suicide." And it was the same voice. It was the same voice. And I had two reactions. The first reaction I had was, it pissed me off, because I don't know if I've been low, but I don't know if I'd ever been that low. I mean, I just lost my baby brother. I raised his ass. I changed his diapers. He was like a child to me, and it nearly killed me. And I'm down breathing in pine straw and Florida sand, and you're going to tell me you've got to give up suicide. And then the second reaction I had was, wow, I think that the thing that's holding life together just talked to me. And I couldn't ignore that. After a while, I got off that ground, and I do not remember how this happened, but I found the right book. I found The Courage to Heal, which was a book about healing from sexual abuse that everybody who's been abused needs to read. And I had in my, I always tell this story, and it's always funny every time I tell it. in my little trailer, I had a TV, a little TV, and the only way I could get any, I had two stations, and I had a 25-foot antenna wire. So if I rolled it up like a lasso and I threw it on the magnolia tree, I could get CBS. And I threw it on the oak tree, I could get PBS. And so one day I rolled it on PBS, and there was a name, John Bradshaw. He wrote,
sure.
so healing. He was one of those guys that, he was, and so he was on PBS, and I had never heard this stuff. So I'm listening to him, and I'm reading Courage to Heal, and I'm weeping and wailing, and I'm throwing ashes into the sky and beating my chest. And I got sober shortly after that. And love called me to put that up, and it broke all the rules. You're not supposed to say that to a suicidal person. You're supposed to send them to a mental institution and tell them, work on that. But Source said to me the very thing that I have said to a number of clients, with a caveat, like you need caveats when you're working with clients about suicide. So I do the caveat, but you got to take it out of your back pocket. You have to take that option out of your back pocket, or you're not going to ever get to where you came here to be.
Right. Exactly. Wow. That's powerful, Vickie. Wow. Well, so what makes you even more an amazing human is how you, as we've talked about already, taken this and used it as a means of service, and your purpose and your function. And I'm curious, like, how do you describe your spiritual path and your relationship with Jesus, or not? What's that all about for you?
A great question. That's a wonderful question. Well, I had pretty much thrown Jesus out with the bathwater. Nice guy and all, but save me from your followers. And but Jesus wasn't going to have that. It was so I'll answer it a couple different ways. I had always been amazed that growing up, and I believe all healers have had an inclination toward God their entire life. And we go to where we go, and that's religion. We go to the building, we go to the people who, whatever. And so I had tried that, and it had failed me miserably, of course. I was going to have to be straight in order to do that. And I had tried that, and that wasn't going to work for me. So it had always amazed me that whenever when the conversation about Source God comes up, Jesus comes up, that within seconds we're talking about religion. And for my entire life, it's been that way. And I'm always feel like I've been hit with a truck every single time that happened, because how do I get that back to the conversation about God? And I would try that. Let's talk about this thing that we think is God. Let's talk about that. Well, the Baptist this and the Jehovah's Witness this. And I'm like, okay. So Jesus had to go. Boom, Jesus went away. And so I was having a meditation with this is so fun. A neighbor who had moved next door to us, Christian, Republican, heterosexual woman, who had come to my door and wanted to know if I knew about Jesus, had sat at my kitchen table, and we somehow were able to put everything aside. And she's now one of the closest people that I had in my life. She's still Republican, she's still heterosexual, and she's still Christian. But she's changed her mind about hell. So anyway, so she and I were doing a meditation, kind of dancing around each other and trying to not to be too flamboyant about where our belief systems were. And so we did a meditation, and in the meditation, it's a simple meditation where she has a notepad, and we pray, and we ask, Source to bring in whatever needs to be bring in, and I just surrender to my imagination. And what happened was I was standing on a beach, and I was looking out in the water, and this figure was starting to come toward me, and I felt good about it. And Sue said, you're a relative, and I'm like, no. And I'm like, I don't know who it is. I don't know who this person is. I'm like, I thought, could that be Jesus? I'm like, I don't do Jesus. Why would Jesus? But it was Jesus.
Wow.
And Sue says, do you have any questions for him? And I didn't. Because when you're in that presence, there are no questions. You're not going to ask questions because you don't give a shit. You don't care. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. You're in the presence. And I had never felt that. And I had never felt that. And he didn't say anything or do anything. But after I got my composure and my human self came back up, I'm like, got a question for you. And at the time, I was writing a fiction book, and I was like all into it, like, this is my book, and this is going to be the thing that, rah, rah, rah. I didn't know I had all that, but I did have all that. And so I said, what about the book? And it was the sweetest thing. He kind of turned me with my shoulder and turned me towards some dunes, some sand dunes. And right above the sand dunes was this big, bold light, like just big, big, beautiful, beautiful light. In the middle of the light was my book. It was like the book had opened up and was, ta-da! This is what happened. I scrammed up the cliff of the whatever sand dunes, sand falling, and I'm like, I've left Jesus, see you, Jesus, thanks for the info, go into book. Got up there, I get to the top of it. This is all an imagination, but my body was feeling it. It was as if it was actually happening. The light in the book started to kind of vibrate, and this just like Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of stuff. These two big steel doors came open, and the book and the light just disappeared, and it went, doo, doo.
Wow.
And I'm like,
where'd my book go?
my book. So I'm like, okay, I go back down. Jesus is still standing there. It was like having a near-death experience. When you have the life review, a lot of people, there's absolutely no judgment, none. Mm-hmm. It's like, I want you to know where your heart is. I know where your heart is. I know where your mind is. And I know why it's there. You think that it's going to mean something to you. I felt like one of those disciples that had seen Jesus do all this stuff. And the disciples were like, but what about the taxes? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Right. They'd seen everything, and they're like, but what about the taxes? And and so I had never felt so loved in my life. Now I tell that story, and you would think from that story that he and I were the closest buds, but he's disappeared into God. I don't know. I go to God. I go to God. I listen to a lot of teachings. I listen to the self SRF Self-Realization Fellowship. I listen to a lot of those teachings. I listen to Joel Goldsmith. I like the oldies. Ernest Holmes, Louise Hay. I listen to a lot of Wayne Dyer. I study a lot. It's my life, because they're going to help me get closer to my I am. I see knowing my I am and experiencing. I got a tattoo as I am.
Oh, very cool.
Well, I tell people that it looks like it was done in a women's prison, because it kind of does. But my heart was in the right place. But I listen to anything and anybody. I still study Christianity. Anybody that I feel my soul tells me that can help me get closer to the realization of my I am. Mm-hmm. That's the teaching right now. I am the guy that I love so much is Joseph Brenner. Are you familiar with his work? I'm sure you know.
No, I'm not actually. Is he an oldie goldie?
He is.
Okay, I'll have to look into him. Very cool.
Well, I'd be curious to know what you think about it, because I was ready for it. I wasn't ready for it a year ago, but trying to move toward I am one with the one, and doing all the mantras to try to get me there, and getting tattoos and kicking to the east and spinning to the west. That's because I know that's what this is about. I know that's what this is about. It's not about what I believe. It's a matter about who I think I know I am, or experience who I am. But getting there is a tricky business.
Yeah.
isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it takes a full commitment, letting go of everything that we've clung to. And I really look at these times now that we're in as all of these systems and programs and all these things we've held on to for safety and sustenance are like, okay, now what? We're being forced to go inside, or
We are.
we'll go mad if we don't.
It's true. We'll be so angry and so full of animosity and resentment.
And afraid.
And afraid. Yes, yes, yes.
And we're seeing that. Well, I want to ask you, I know you have some interesting thoughts. You don't believe in free will. I'm curious about, what are your thoughts on free will?
Well, this makes a lot of people mad. But I'm okay with that. For the longest time I did, because I was taught that there's free will. And there were scriptures and words on paper that, back that up. The problem with that is I know that I barely made it through the skin of my teeth. And there are a whole lot more people that have had a whole lot more sexual abuse, a whole lot more physical abuse. And to say that they're not coming to God because they are not honoring their free will is, I think it comes from a tradition that does not really align with love. Because there's no way they can, unless they can. They might be able to. If the right teacher came in at the right time, they could, read the book. They weren't so torn down. I know what it feels like not to have hope. I know what that feels like. And if you do not have hope, your free will cannot be triggered. It cannot be mechanized. It cannot be honored. It cannot be paid attention to. You cannot focus on that. So I think it comes from privilege. And I think it comes from a tradition that has not fully wrapped its heart around love. Mm-hmm. Now, I do, that said, I do believe that, of course, the spirit of love is within them. There's no way that it couldn't be, or they would be breathing. And so I don't ever give up hope on somebody being able to get in touch with that free will. And it's so funny because I listened to a Joel Goldsmith interview the other day, and he was talking about this preacher over in Australia, and they met up after the sermon, and Joel Goldsmith said to the guy, he said, "There's only one part about your sermon that I don't quite agree with." And the guy was like, "Well, what is that?" He goes, and they were driving in the car, and they passed this drunkard on the street. He said, pull over. And Joel Goldsmith said, "So you taught essentially this morning that in order for him to be able to hear source, essentially, to paraphrase, he needs to come to your church or come to a church to be able to hear source. Now, what's the likelihood of that?" And so what you just said to him is he's damned, not to hell necessarily, but damned for a lifetime of misery because he can't walk through the doors. And even if I sat down here and put a tent over his head and spent the next month, he might be able to come if I fed him and he bathed him, and there's that little fragment of hope that comes from spirit that still might be there, or it might not be. I haven't lived in that man's shoes, and I'm like, right there.
I can agree with you there, and I too have thought exactly that same thing. I mean, and I do. I mean, if we don't know, we don't do what we don't know, right?
And even if knowing it, lots of spiritual people are walking around knowing stuff. Mm-hmm. And and buying a new pair of yoga pants or getting a new crystal every day or a new book. But knowing it and living it, as you and I both know.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. And so again, it's tricky business. It takes a lot to be into the love. I discovered 2 years ago that I was not loving the way I know that I was supposed to love. That was rude. I didn't like that, but it's true. Yeah. And until I love like Jesus, I'm not done.
Yeah. Well,
and I'm not so far from being done.
Well, and that's really until we're self-realized, like Jesus, Yogananda.
Yogananda, your guide.
Yeah. So it's, we haven't accomplished our purpose. And so back to the man, the drunkard on the street, what about him? How do we serve him in the best capacity?
Well, let spirit tell you that moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it may be just giving him $5.
Mm-hmm.
It may be asking him to go for a ride with you in the car wherever they were going. It may be saying, hey, I know somewhere where you can have a bed for the night. It
Mm-hmm.
may be that you bring them to your own house.
Mm-hmm.
You know, spirit knows where that person is. I always say that spirit saw how they put their britches on that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I will also say, like, you know, people who have been beat and beat down by religion, by judgment, by whatever, by humans not knowing how beautiful they are, and so they beat down other people. They're kind of like a dog that's been kicked in the street. And you can't go to a dog that's been kicked in the street and put your hand up and pet his head. I'd advise you not to do that.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
He'll bite you.
Yes, I get that. And that's beautiful. Yeah. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what about evil in the world? What's your thoughts about that?
Another unpopular answer. But we're bold, aren't we?
That's right. Hey, don't hide, no holds barred here.
That's right. I love that you're doing this so much. I love that you're doing this heart to heart. It's beautiful. Thank you for bringing this into the world. The world needs you, and the world needs what you're doing. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I love doing it.
You know, I was taught, again, words on paper and words out of mouth behind the podium, that there is such a thing as this evil. So the story is that this beautiful, beautiful, amazing love, something was able to say, you know, thank you, but no thank you. That's the first premise that evil is based on. That we could come, that energy, whatever it was, whether it was an angel or whatever it was able to say to that loving intelligence, I think I've got a better plan. So the premise is skewed. And, you know, after having been in the presence of the only human I know that came, and maybe Yogananda did too, but I'd studied Jesus, not so much Yogananda, but the only human that has done that, been really, really close. And I was in his presence, and I know what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not going to want to until your human self kicks in, which brings me to, I think evil is a human thing.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
It's not an entity, or I think entities come from human, and I've seen that. I know that can occur. I think that the things that are happening from human to human, and humans to animals, and humans to the earth is all human. And it's based on one thing, and that is that we don't know who we are. That we're all the, you know, until we're not, we're thinking that we're just physical beings trying to get a piece of the pie. And if you get my piece of the pie, then I don't have one. And, you know, lots of stuff can happen to me, and therefore I've got to blah, blah, blah. And, you know, children being raised from unconscious parents and wounded parents who have not healed. And we have to remember something. We have to remember that Freud was in our culture like 2.5 minutes ago. We're just now beginning to ask ourselves, you know, maybe I shouldn't hit my kid. I mean, we're just now getting there, just now. And I can give you 15 names of people like, yes, my God, we still should hit the kid. So we are kind of not, we're just kind of slow moving, awakening beings.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Evil comes from unconscious attachment to thinking that you're merely human. And it is very powerful. And because we are very powerful. I'm just now getting in touch with how powerful we are. Yeah. I knew how powerful we were as far as the negative. I knew that real good. But not so. This is kind of new for me to get the real understanding of who we are in the positive way. And that's what you and I and a bunch of us are going to see more of.
Amen. Yes.
Blow minds.
It's happening. And that's of all the craziness in the world, it's really accelerating the awakening process. And I want
to know what you see. Tell me what you see. Tell me how you see that. What is it you see?
Well, I see that, the people, like I keep saying, and you've heard my talks on Sunday, I definitely see that we have given meaning to the meaningless. We're looking for
Yes.
identity. Like you said,
Yes.
we've forgotten who we are. So we're trying
Yes.
to find that identity
Yes.
for, oh, get another degree, buy a bigger house, get your body looking like a movie star, whatever it is we think is good. Like you said, that you had the job, the house, the relationship, you thought you'd come home and yet you were ready to shoot yourself, that something's wrong there, right? And so I think that now truly the universe or whatever, enough of us have like, okay, this is not okay. That we all know that whatever's going on in the world, there's something not right. And so and we're finding that no matter how hard we look outside of ourselves, it's not there. And
Yeah.
so we're being chopped off at the knees to, it's like, okay, I get it. I surrender. So I think people are,
Right.
I don't think we have, like they say in 12 steps, you don't have to go to the bottom floor before you get off the elevator, right? Well, I think we get it how we get it, right? But I think that well, even though it looks horrible and challenging, I'm seeing great growth. I'm seeing humans being kinder and more compassionate and understanding. More people are wanting to come out and serve, and people are becoming a little gentler and compassionate. So I think there's a lot of good happening on the planet. I do think we're choosing another way to be in the world than we ever have before.
I love hearing you say that. I
Yeah.
love hearing you say that. And by practical examples, just the kindness and more compassion, that it's a real thing. It's a real thing.
Well, and the simple things, our beloved founder, Dr. Selwa of our ministry, she's, I've gotten to spend a lot of time with her the past couple of years, and just gotten to know her, and she's simple, she's not yet very direct and powerful at the same time. And she says, just tell somebody, oh, I like your hair. Oh, that's a pretty blouse. Just engage with someone. Kindness is so much more powerful than we ever can imagine. I mean,
beautiful.
I was just in the grocery store. This popped in my mind. I was talking to the produce guys. I was asking them for something. I was at Publix, and I was just engaged in a conversation. And these guys go, "Thank you for being so nice." And they ran back in the back to see if they could find what I was looking for, even though I think they knew they weren't going to find it, but they wanted me to know that they appreciated it. So it doesn't take a lot to really change someone's course. And like that drunk on the street you talked about, the depressed man on the street, just be kind, let them know that someone cares, and that goes a long way.
Yes. Yeah. And I love to hear you say that, because that is happening in the midst of, the antagonism and and I've had I'm sure you've seen my Facebook post over the years. I've had trouble too. I was real triggered by the election. There was unhealed stuff that needed to heal. And, I had a client when she got into finding her, I always say her spiritual legs, realizing that, it wasn't her family, and it was her view of the perception of all that. Once she found that, she had a dream, and I always pay attention to my clients' dreams. And I'm going to put this in my book. So there's this valley, and then there's this scrag of a tall tree, and at the top of the tree is a crow, and the crow is flying down into the valley, and the valley is just bunches of dead people, just wiped out. It's dark, and they've been annihilated. And the crow is picking up the gold and flying it and putting it back from the top. And I think she had a nest. And to me, that's what we have to do. I wish that humans were at a place where we didn't need the bottom, but it is what it is. I mean, it just is. I wish that we did not have to be annihilated, as Hafiz says, but we have to be annihilated. Yeah. And the thing is, and I used to think, what kind of carrot can I hold in front of my clients to make them want this? Because I can't say you're going to get more goodies and that's going to make it better. I can't say your car is going to get newer and your job is going to be. So what? So spirit, it was like, I got this. I'm like, oh, good.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a carrot big enough. Their carrot is inside of them. And my job is to get them inside. That's my job.
Amen. And you do that very well and extremely well. And I hear little rumblings from all kinds of your clients or those who know your clients. So you've really turned their lives around, saved their lives. And it's huge work you're doing. And I know that you have, you're thinking about, work with your spiritual counseling, maybe creating a course and of how, well, what is it? How to, train the trainers, I guess, how to teach them what you've learned and put that all together. And your book, we're winding down in our hour here, but I want to definitely take a few minutes to hear about what's your book about. I know you're writing it now, and what's the inspiration and the meaning of it?
Humans getting a bad rap. We've gotten a bad rap. When what's her name? Germany said that, what was her name? Who said that after all, I still think that humans are good. The Jewish woman, the little girl in Nazi Germany. I can't believe that.
Oh,
anyway.
Okay, go ahead.
So when she said, I believe the humans are good, that was one flame, that's been in this deluge of how much we suck.
Mm-hmm.
And that if we just knew how much we suck, and if we could just hit ourselves a little bit harder with the whip. That's one of the first things I teach my clients is put the whip down. You cannot beat yourself up enough to get you to where spirit wants you to go. It will not work. It takes them a year to do it, but they do. And when they put down the whip, they start getting in touch with this person that source sees them, because they're seeing source.
Right.
They're like, am I allowed to love myself? They say in a whisper, is it okay that I think I'm enough? Is it all right that I view myself as already whole? Is that okay? And so, but there's a couple of things. Not only do we have parents that try to kick them into submission and control, and they're just being good parents. Like, if I yell at them long enough, or if I degrade them long enough, or I control them long enough, then they'll get the picture. So that's all changing, but it tells the child that they're not good enough. Mm-hmm. So we already have the cultural thing. Then we have the natural propensity for humans. You think of a baby coming into the world and it just left the lap of God, and now it comes into bright lights and loud noises, and they used to hit them. I don't know if they're still hitting them, but get them breathing. So,
yeah.
It's a very rude introduction into being human. And then the baby who just came from the lap of God is in this pinpoint of energy, this constricted, contracted energy of the skin that they now have to fit in. And then they find out that if they bump their elbow, it hurts.
Yeah.
Now they're like, oh my God, this thing is vulnerable and this thing can be hurt. And then have somebody yell at them leaning over. I call them the tall people who lean over and yell at you, and so you've got this thing about not knowing that you're amazing and beautiful. And so, but you've got the spirit inside of you that says, you are. Whatever. I got to go to kindergarten, and so just get on with it. Get on with it. But all those unprocessed emotions that has within them accusation, resentment towards yourself, unacceptance of who you are. And so we have to begin to understand that who we really are. We've got to forgive ourselves for being human. We have to be okay with that. And I haven't seen anything out there that is doing that. Yeah. Maybe there is, but I'm not seeing it.
Well, I think it's time, and we're ready for it.
Yeah,
and was it Anne Frank?
Thank you. I mean, how could
I
we
know,
forget
I know
it?
if I just let you go on, it'd pop in my head, but I wasn't going to stand there like a deer in the headlight. I was just like, it'll come, it'll come.
Well, I figured that we were going to text each other later on and
Yeah.
come up with, but thank you for coming with it in
That's
this
right,
live
yeah.
stream.
Well, I knew exactly who it was, and I'm like, so we could have both just like, but anyway, well, I'm so excited, and it's going to be, and what's the title of it going to be?
It's Embracing Humans, Healing the Bad Rap. That's the working title.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
I love
And
that.
I want it for life coaches. I want it for, neophyte spiritual counselors. Spiritual counseling is going to become a thing, and
Oh
they
yeah.
need some training.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you know that we've reached out to you, and because we know how wonderful you are at that, and the thought that you're even entertaining the idea of putting something together to train the trainers is such a blessing. And really, you are a master at this in a huge way, and your life is your demonstration. I mean, that's ultimately what it turns down to, right? Because
I like that. Thank you. Yeah.
Read the books all we want. We can do the practice, but really who we are speaks louder than anything we could ever say. And, if anybody says, well, I'm like this because, well, we do, there is a way out. And
you're like this because you haven't healed. That's all. That's the only problem. There's only one problem, and that is that you do not know who you are. You do not know your magnificence. It's not anything other than that.
I agree.
It's very simple. That's why I like Dr. Sala. And I love that simple approach. It's very simple.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes complicated means to get there, and we have to meet, we have to work with that too. But in the meantime, we can all be a little kinder, right?
Absolutely.
Be a little more compassionate and understanding. And I think people are overall. I really do.
Well, I know that I've got a long way to go, but I know what the goal is.
Yeah.
At least I know what the goal is now.
That's right. That is true. Just keep your eye on the prize, and spirit, just surrender to source, spirit, whatever you choose to call it, the universe, and we'll be led,
Yes, we will. And we are. We are.
Well, as we wind down, how does someone contact you or get on your website? What's the best way I know you have a cool Facebook group.
Yes. Facebook me, and I'll get you involved in my little Facebook group. And so Facebook is probably the right way. Right now I'm changing my website, like I told you. And so that, and that's all, whenever you change your website, you were like, okay, don't like this, not even a little bit. Oh, I see. Spirit Hand is in this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, but yeah, Facebook, you can find me, just, spell my name correctly and you'll find me.
What I will do is, this will be the eternal home of this interview will be on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/InspireUTV.
Okay.
And I will put in the description your Facebook page.
Fantastic.
So you can go there. So if you're watching and you want to connect with Vickie and join her group.
Listen, would you do me a favor and put in my YouTube channel? Because I think I'm going to revamp that. It's just Loved Humans.
Love Humans?
Loved Humans.
Okay, I will do that. Plural humans?
Yes.
Okay, consider it done. Okay, Vickie, you are awesome. Thank you so much. This has been great. We could have talked for 2 hours. I still have other things. We'll have to do it again, but in the meantime, keep on keeping on, doing the good work, and God bless you for everything.
Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, dear. Namaste. Many blessings, and enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.